Get out, and never come back." The words cut through the air like glass shattering on a stone floor. My father's voice was louder than the creak of the old wooden door he'd just slammed behind me. "I'm Alina, 29 years old." And that night, standing in the doorway of the house I had helped keep afloat for years, I realized something about family. Love and loyalty are not always the same thing. The living room smelled faintly of my mother's lavender candles, still flickering behind him. The carpet where I'd once spilled cocoa as a child looked the same, only more worn. But his eyes were different, no trace of softness, only the fury of someone who believed he held all the power. "Dad," I tried to steady my voice. "I've been paying the bills here for 3 years. Do you really think—" He cut me off, his face turning red, jaw tight. "You think money buys you a place in this house? This is my home, my rules, and if you can't respect that, then leave." Mom was there too, her hand on his arm, but she didn't say much. Just that silent nod, the one that felt more like a verdict than comfort. So I left. The night air was cold, sharper than I expected. My car sat parked in the driveway, the same car I used to drive them to appointments, to grocery runs, to family dinners. The keys trembled in my hand, not from fear, but from a silence I refused to break. As I drove away, the headlights cut across the house's bricks, and for a second I thought about all the times I had painted over their cracks, patched their walls, mailed in checks when they couldn't. They told me it was what family does. But now family was telling me I was disposable. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just carried the silence with me like a cloak. Because sometimes silence is sharper than any reply. Weeks went by. No calls. No apologies. Just absence. And for the first time I let it be. Until one morning my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Why have you stopped paying the mortgage?" The bank sent a notice. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold beside me. Something inside me shifted, not anger, not sorrow, but a steady clarity. Because the truth was simple. I was never their tenant. I was their daughter. And daughters don't pay rent to be loved. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries and call it love? Let me know in the comments. That was the day I knew my silence had finally become an answer they couldn't ignore. The text sat on my phone screen like a demand, not a question. "Why have you stopped paying the mortgage?" The bank sent a notice. I didn't reply right away. I wanted the weight of their words to hang in the air for a while, like smoke that stings the eyes before it clears. For years, every month, like clockwork, I had transferred the payment. It wasn't even my loan, not my name on the deed, but my income kept that house standing. Dad never thanked me. Mom rarely acknowledged it. If anything, they acted like it was my duty, as though being their daughter meant I owed them my life on an installment plan. That morning, I walked out to the balcony of my small rented apartment. The city was awake, engines humming, neighbors clinking cups against their railings. I took a slow breath. It was the first time in a long time I didn't feel like a prisoner in my own family's house. The phone rang. Mom. I let it buzz once, twice, 3 times before answering. Her voice came sharp. "Alina, what do you think you're doing? The bank is threatening foreclosure. Your father is furious. Why would you suddenly stop?" I closed my eyes. I could almost see her standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, her voice low enough to hide from neighbors, but cutting enough to bruise. "Because," I said softly, "Dad told me to get out. Remember." There was a pause, just silence, thick and uneasy. "That was in anger," she said quickly. "You shouldn't take things so literally. Families argue. But this house needs you." Her choice of words struck me. Needs you. Not wants you. Not loves you. I kept the lights on for you. Paid the taxes when you couldn't. I thought that made me part of this family. Turns out, I was just your safety net, I replied. My voice was calm, almost too calm. On the other end, she sighed, frustrated. You don't understand. Without you, we could lose everything. Her words echoed, but they didn't carry the power they once did, because losing everything wasn't mine to carry anymore. I looked down at the tiny brass key still on my keychain, the one that once opened their front door. I hadn't had the heart to throw it away yet. Now it felt like a reminder, a symbol of how I had traded years of my life for a lock that was never really mine. For the first time I realized my silence wasn't abandonment. It was freedom. And when freedom answers, silence becomes louder than any scream. After that call, I didn't hear from Mom for a week. The silence was almost louder than her words. I thought maybe they'd figure it out, maybe they'd adjust. But then an envelope arrived at my apartment, thick and heavy, with Dad's handwriting on the front. Inside was a copy of the mortgage statement, red-stamped with final notice, and a note in his sharp, all-caps scrawl. Pay up. This is still your responsibility. Don't be selfish. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling slightly between my hands. Selfish. That was his word for me. I thought back to the nights I skipped dinner so I could transfer more money toward their bills. The vacations I never took. The emergency fund I never built. Every sacrifice had been painted as duty, and duty was painted as love. But here was the truth in black ink. It was never love. It was leverage. That evening, I went to the bank myself. Not to pay, but to see. The manager pulled up the file and explained, politely but firmly, that the mortgage was in my parents' names. Their signatures, their responsibility. My payments had been unofficial, generous contributions, nothing more. I remember sitting there, a strange relief washing over me. Years of being held hostage by guilt suddenly loosened their grip. "Miss, are you okay?" the manager asked gently. I smiled faintly. More than okay. When I walked out of that bank, the city lights glowed brighter than I'd ever noticed before. For the first time, I saw that the chains I thought bound me had only ever been in my head. That night, Mom called again. Her tone was different now, pleading, softer, almost trembling. "Alina, your father doesn't understand how much stress this is causing me. Please, just one more payment until we figure something out." I let her words sink in. The manipulation, the sudden shift from command to plea. "Mom," I whispered, "you both told me I didn't belong in that house. And now you want me to buy my place back. No, not anymore." There was a stunned silence, then the faint sound of her breathing quickening. "Alina," she began, but I ended the call. The little brass key on my chain caught the light from my lamp, glowing like it was waiting for me to make a choice. That night, I placed it in a drawer. Not thrown away, not forgotten, but no longer carried with me. Because the truth was simple. A key without a door is just a piece of metal. And I was finally learning to stop mistaking metal for love. The following Sunday, I found out just how desperate they'd become. I was at the grocery store, slipping apples into a paper bag, when I heard my name echo through the aisle. "Alina!" I turned, and there they were, my parents. Dad's face flushed, Mom's eyes darting nervously. They looked smaller somehow, weighed down by something heavier than age. Before I could move, Dad raised his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You think you can walk away from your family's responsibilities? After everything we've done for you?" Heads turned. A mother with a toddler paused mid-step. The cashier froze mid-scan. The entire store seemed to lean in to listen. I felt the sting of heat rise to my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. I placed the apples gently in my cart, then met his stare. "Done for me." My voice was calm, almost too steady. "Dad, you mean the house I kept from foreclosure for 3 years? The food I bought when you couldn't? The bills I paid while you mocked me for being single at 29? His jaw tightened. He hadn't expected me to answer back, not here, not in front of strangers. Mom tried to interject, her voice softer. "Alina, please, not like this. We just need you to save you again." I cut in, still calm. "I already gave you years of my life, and when I needed family, you threw me out." The silence that followed was heavy. People were still watching. Someone in the next aisle whispered, "She paid their mortgage?" Dad's face darkened. His pride was bleeding in public, and he couldn't stand it. He leaned forward, his voice a growl meant only for me. "You'll regret this. Blood is blood, and you can't escape it." I didn't step back. I leaned in just slightly, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharper than any shout. "No, Dad. Blood is not a contract, and I've stopped signing my life away." I straightened, pushed my cart toward the register, and felt the weight of every pair of eyes following me. But for the first time I wasn't ashamed. On the way out I passed a display of brass keychains. One caught my eye, shaped like a heart, cracked down the middle. Without thinking, I bought it. Later, when I clipped it next to the old house key, I realized something. Symbols change. A key once meant belonging. Now it meant breaking free. And that broken heart, it wasn't tragedy. It was truth. Sometimes love breaks. Sometimes it doesn't heal. But sometimes it sets you free. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived by courier. Heavy paper, official seal. I tore it open at my kitchen counter, half expecting another angry note. But this time, it wasn't my father's scrawl. It was legal language, neat and cold. Demand for financial contribution. They had filed a petition, claiming I had an obligation to continue paying the mortgage, since I had been acting as a responsible party. My chest tightened, but not from fear. From clarity. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about control. I called a lawyer the next morning, a woman recommended by a colleague. Her name was Ms. Daniels, sharp eyes, voice steady as stone. I slid the letter across her desk, my palms slightly damp. She read it, lips curving into something that looked dangerously close to amusement. "They don't have a case," she said finally, "unless your name is on the deed or the loan agreement. Your payments were voluntary. A gift, if you will. They cannot compel you to keep giving." I exhaled so deeply I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. "Then why would they try?" I asked quietly. Ms. Daniels leaned forward. "Because sometimes people would rather gamble with intimidation than admit they've lost power." Her words sank into me like medicine. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table again, the mortgage notice and the lawyer's reassurance side by side. For the first time, the paper didn't look threatening. It looked like evidence of the lengths they'd go to keep me tethered. The phone buzzed. This time it was my aunt. She'd always been quieter in family disputes, the one who stayed out of shouting matches. "Alina," she said softly, "your parents are telling everyone you abandoned them, that you're trying to make them homeless." I swallowed. The old guilt flickered, that small, trained reflex to run back to save them. But then I remembered Dad's voice, "Get out and never come back." "Auntie," I said slowly, "I didn't abandon them. They abandoned me the second they decided love was conditional." There was a pause, and then her voice cracked just slightly. "I believe you. It wasn't an army. It wasn't a courtroom win, but it was something, a shift. Proof that truth could still find witnesses." Later, I opened the drawer and pulled out the old brass key. For the first time, I didn't feel a pang of longing or loss. I felt distance. And distance, I realized, is sometimes the only space where healing can begin. The petition fizzled quickly. Ms. Daniels filed a simple response, and within days it was clear they had no legal ground. Still, the bruise of it lingered. Not because they tried to take me to court, but because of what it revealed, that my parents saw me as a wallet before they saw me as a daughter. I thought that would be the end, but the fallout had only begun. At work one afternoon, a colleague slid into the seat beside me during lunch. "Hey, Alina, I didn't know things were rough at home. Your dad came by last week." My fork froze midair. "Came by? To the office?" He nodded, uneasy. "He said you were neglecting them, that he raised you better. It was uncomfortable." Heat rushed to my face. Anger, yes, but also something sharper, humiliation. My father wasn't just trying to guilt me privately. He was trying to brand me publicly. That evening, I sat on my balcony with the city lights flickering like restless thoughts. For the first time, I let myself feel the ache beneath the anger. I had carried them for so long, hoping one day they'd see me not as a burden or a bank, but as their child. Now the truth was carved clear. That day would never come. And yet, in that clarity, I felt something new. A strange kind of strength. The phone buzzed again, this time not my parents, but my cousin Layla. "I heard what Uncle said about you," she blurted. "It isn't right. Everyone knows you kept that house standing. I just wanted you to know I see you." Her words landed like a thread tying me back to something real, something human. It was small, but it mattered. Later that week, I stopped by Ms. Daniels' office again. She handed me a folder. "Your parents may be struggling financially. The house is 3 payments behind. If the bank moves forward, foreclosure is likely." I stared at the papers. The house I had poured so much of myself into, the one that spat me out like a stranger, might collapse without me. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to rush in and save it like muscle memory. But a deeper voice inside whispered, "Not every collapse is a tragedy. Sometimes it's the ground making space for something new." I closed the folder gently, slid it back to her. "Let it go," I said. And for the first time, I felt the truth in those words. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was a Saturday morning when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps on my apartment door. I opened it, and there they were, my parents. Dad looked thinner, his posture stiff but trembling. Mom clutched her purse with both hands like it was armor. "We need to talk," Dad said, pushing past me before I could answer. I didn't move to stop him. I simply shut the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. He stood in the middle of my living room, scanning the modest space with disdain. "So this is where you ran off to. While we're drowning in debt, you're living comfortably, pretending you don't have a family." Mom's voice was softer, but no less sharp. "Alina, please. The house is going under. The bank won't wait much longer. Can't you just help us for old times' sake?" Old times. I thought of those old times. The nights I worked overtime to cover their bills. The holidays I missed because they demanded I stay home to help. The insults Dad hurled when I dared to ask for gratitude. I sat down calmly at my table, motioning to the chairs. "Sit. If we're going to talk, let's do it properly." They exchanged a glance, then sat. I pulled open the drawer beside me, took out the brass house key, and placed it on the table between us. Its weight echoed against the wood. Their eyes locked on it instantly. "This," I said, tapping the key, "used to mean home to me. It used to mean belonging. But when Dad told me to get out and never come back, it stopped meaning that. It became just metal." Dad's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic. Words said in anger don't erase blood." I met his eyes, steady. "No, but they erase trust." For once he had no reply. His jaw clenched, but silence filled the gap. I leaned forward. "I've carried you both for years. Mortgage payments, bills, food. And not once did you say thank you. Not once did you ask if I was okay. You just assumed I'd keep bleeding myself dry for you. But I'm done." Mom's eyes glistened, a tear slipping despite her attempt to hold it back. She reached for the key, but I slid it away. "No," I said firmly. "That's mine to keep. A reminder of what I gave and what I won't give again." The silence was thick, but this time I owned it, because silence wasn't abandonment anymore. It was power. They left that day without another word. Dad's pride wouldn't let him beg, and Mom's tears couldn't change the silence I wrapped around myself like armor. But a week later, I received a call from the bank. The house, my childhood home, had been foreclosed. Just like that, the place I once held together with my sacrifices was gone. I expected devastation to hit me. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was quiet, worn down. "We lost the house, Alina." I closed my eyes, breathing in slowly. I know. You could have stopped it, she whispered, her voice breaking. I already did, for 3 years, I answered gently. But love isn't supposed to come with invoices, and you made it clear my place in that house was never permanent. There was no yelling this time, no demands, just silence, like she finally understood that every choice had a cost. Days later, I drove past the house one last time. The curtains I had once helped my mother hang were drawn. The garden I used to water had dried to brittle stalks. For years, I poured myself into keeping that place alive, and now it stood as a monument to everything they'd taken for granted. I parked for a moment, slipped the brass key from my bag, and held it in my palm. The cracked heart keychain glinted in the sunlight beside it. One symbol of belonging, one of breaking. Together, they told my story. I didn't throw them away. Instead, I placed them in a small wooden box I kept in my car. Not as burdens, but as proof. Proof that silence, when chosen, can be the loudest answer of all. That night, I went home to my apartment, my space, my freedom. And as I curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, a thought came to me, quiet, steady, liberating. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't lost. I was free from a house that demanded my wallet but never gave me love. The next morning, I sent a single message to my parents. The mortgage was never mine to carry, and neither was your silence when I needed love. This time I chose my own. No reply came, and I didn't wait for one, because revenge didn't mean destroying them. It meant reclaiming myself, and reclaiming myself felt like the first real home I'd ever had.